All right, let's dive into a movie that's, well, it's a bit of a wild one. We're talking Leprechaun in the Hood.
Hmm.
This is a listener request, and I'm honestly kind of excited to dig into this one. It's the fifth movie in the Leprechaun franchise, but it takes a hard turn, like really hard.
It's not your typical horror sequel, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how they took this character, this leprechaun, and dropped him right into 90s urban LA.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
Irish folklore meets Black America. It's a clash of worlds that you really wouldn't expect, but somehow it works.
It creates this bizarre energy that, well, it's what makes this movie so interesting to talk about.
Okay, so for those who haven't had the pleasure, let me set the scene a little. The movie starts with Mac Daddy, played by Ice-T, no less.
Ice-T, yeah.
He finds this stash of leprechaun gold and a magic flute that can control the leprechaun. Now, being a smart businessman, he uses this to become a big-time record producer.
But as we know, messing with leprechaun gold never ends well.
Oh no, this sets up for some serious karmic payback down the line. And that payback comes in the form of three up-and-coming rappers: Postmaster P, Stray Bullet, and Butch.
And they're not your stereotypical rappers either. They're actually trying to make it with a positive message.
Which is kind of ironic, right? Because they end up robbing Mac Daddy thinking they're getting a big break.
Yeah, and in the process, they accidentally released the leprechaun who was, well, he was trapped.
Of course, the leprechaun is played by the amazing Warwick Davis, who, as always, is just fantastic in the role.
He really brings this mischievous energy to the character even when he's being, menacing.
Totally. So now you've got these three rappers trying to stop this murderous leprechaun while Mac Daddy wants his gold and his flute back. It's a whole lot of chaos.
And a lot of laughs, let's be honest. This movie is not afraid to be funny.
Oh, absolutely. It's a horror comedy in the truest sense. But what's interesting is that the leprechaun, he's not just some mindless monster. He's actually kind of smart.
He's clever. He uses his magic and his rhymes to manipulate people, and it's almost like a commentary on how the music industry can exploit artists.
Right. He represents this greed and obsession, and he'll do whatever it takes to get what he wants.
Which makes you think about, the allure of fame and fortune and what people are willing to sacrifice for it.
Absolutely. And the movie balances that with the struggles of these rappers trying to break into the industry, trying to stay true to their message. It's more layered than you'd think.
It's a mix of social commentary, humor, and genuine horror. It keeps you guessing the whole time.
And it's all done with this low budget aesthetic that somehow works perfectly.
It adds to the campiness, wouldn't you say?
Oh, totally. It's like they had to get creative with what they had, and it gives the movie this unique charm.
Kind of like how those rappers are using what they have to try and make their dreams come true.
Exactly. It's like the movie itself reflects their struggle. And that brings us to some of some of the more memorable
Now,
moments.
there are plenty of those.
The Afro-Pick death scene, for example. Gruesome, absurd, and you'll never forget it.
Or how about the zombie fly girls? It's like a twisted commentary on the objectification of women in the music industry.
Yeah, it's all there beneath the surface. And that's where this movie gets really interesting. It's playing with these ideas about race, about stereotypes, about the music business itself.
It's definitely not afraid to push boundaries. Now, whether it does so effectively, well, that's up for debate.
Right. The critics were definitely divided on this one. Some loved the audacity, others thought it relied too much on those stereotypes.
But audiences loved it,
Yeah.
especially in the Black community. It became a cult classic, and people still talk about it today.
And a big part of that success has to go to Warwick Davis. He owns this role. He's menacing, he's funny, he's got those rhyming taunts, he's just brilliant.
And it was his first time rapping as the Leprechaun, which adds a whole other level to his performance. You can tell he's having fun with it.
Oh, yeah, totally. And then you've got Ice-T in the mix, which brought a lot of street cred to the film. He's not usually in horror movies.
It's one of the few times, and it works surprisingly well.
He plays Mac Daddy with this cool confidence that makes you almost root for him, even though he's the one who unleashed the leprechaun in the first place.
It's a fascinating dynamic. You
Yep.
have Ice-T representing this established power in the music industry, then these young rappers trying to find their voice, and then the Leprechaun, who's just pure chaos.
It's like they're all caught in this web of greed and ambition, and it's the leprechaun who's pulling the strings.
He's a symbol of what can happen when those desires consume you.
And the movie uses that to comment on the darker side of the entertainment industry, how it can chew people up and spit them out.
It's a lot to unpack,
Yeah.
but it's done in a way that's both entertaining and thought-provoking.
Leprechaun in the Hood. It's a movie that makes you laugh, it makes you cringe, and it definitely makes you think.
And sometimes that's all you can ask for from a film.
We were just talking about some of the memorable moments, and one that pops into my head, I don't know why, is Butch, one of the rappers, when he runs into the Leprechaun, and he's dressed in women's clothes.
Oh yeah. That's a wild scene. It's playing with so many things at once. You've got Butch, who's, already dealing with trying to make it in the music industry, and then on top of that, he's exploring his identity, trying to figure himself out, and then bam, Leprechaun.
Right, and not just any leprechaun. This one is obsessed with gold, murderous, and, represents all these kind of dark, exploitative things.
It's this crazy clash of vulnerability and
Yeah.
and this menacing force. Like you're not even sure what to feel. Are you scared? Are you laughing? It's so uncomfortable, but also kind of brilliant.
It's totally unexpected. You think you know where the movie's going, and then it throws this curveball at you. And it really highlights how Leprechaun in the Hood isn't afraid to push boundaries.
Yeah, it's not your typical horror movie. It's playing with social norms, with gender, with everything. And it does it in this way that's both outrageous and thought-provoking.
And again, Warwick Davis just nails it. He's so good at being both scary and hilarious at the same time.
Oh, absolutely. He brings this depth to the leprechaun, even when he's spouting off ridiculous rhymes. You totally believe this is a creature who's been around for centuries and is just obsessed with getting his gold back.
But then he'll crack a joke, and you can't help but laugh. It's a tough balance to strike, but Warwick Davis makes it look effortless.
It's why this movie works so well. It's
Huh.
got that horror, that comedy, and those little moments that just make you think.
Speaking of things that work well, we got to talk about the setting, right? This movie being set in the world of 90s hip hop just gives it this whole other energy.
Oh, totally. The music, the clothes, the whole vibe.
Yeah.
It's not just window dressing. It's part of what makes this movie so unique. It adds to the grittiness and the energy, and it reinforces the themes the movie is exploring.
You've got these vibrant, like really alive visuals, and then these moments of, well, extreme violence and really dark humor. It's a trip, but it fits.
It's a perfect reflection of the movie itself. And, this movie did well enough that they made a sequel, Leprechaun, Back to the Hood.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have done that if it didn't connect with people.
That says something, right? It really tapped into something that audiences were looking for.
A horror comedy that embraced Black culture, wasn't afraid to be over the top, and also, dared to touch on some real issues.
Yeah, even if it did it in a way that was, maybe a little messy at times.
It sparked conversations. It got people thinking about representation, about stereotypes, about how Black culture is portrayed on screen. And that's important.
It showed that horror comedy could be more than just scares and laughs. It could actually, say something.
And it did all that while still being wildly entertaining. I mean, come on, the leprechaun rapping in the final battle, it's pure gold.
Pure gold. And I think that's why people still love Leprechaun in the Hood. It's funny, it's scary, it's got something to say, and it's just plain fun to watch.
It's a movie that reminds you that even the most unexpected places, you can find something that's both entertaining and makes you think.
And that's pretty cool, right? Okay, so we've talked about a lot, right? The plot, the humor, the horror, but also the deeper stuff. But you said earlier that people really connected with this movie, really connected. Why do you think that is?
I think a lot of it has to do with, well, with tapping into that specific time,
Yeah.
the 90s. Hip-hop was blowing up. And this movie, it didn't just use hip-hop, it felt like hip-hop.
Yeah, it wasn't just a background thing.
No, it was the music, the clothes, how people talked. If you grew up in that time, you felt it.
You felt seen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's the humor. It's over the top, sure. But it's also smart. It knows it's being ridiculous and it winks at the audience.
We're all in on the joke.
Exactly. But it also uses that humor to make fun of things we take seriously.
Yeah.
Social stuff, conventions.
It makes you laugh, but then you think, they've got a point.
Right. And then there's the deeper stuff. Greed, ambition, wanting to succeed. That's something everyone relates to.
Doesn't matter who you are, you've felt that.
And the movie, it uses the leprechaun to show that. He's like this symbol of how those things can go wrong.
He takes it to the extremes.
But that's what makes it work. You see him, this crazy magical creature, and you see how greed takes over.
And it makes you think about your own choices, maybe.
Maybe. But it does it in a way that's fun to watch. That's important.
So it's like Leprechaun in the Hood. It's got it all, doesn't it? Horror, comedy, social stuff, a warning about greed, and it all comes together in this this wild, crazy package.
The package that somehow works
Mhm.
is what makes it unique, and it's why people still watch it. It's a movie that doesn't fit neatly into any box.
It keeps you guessing, keeps you entertained, and maybe even makes you think a little.
And that's pretty awesome.
So if anyone out there hasn't seen Leprechaun in the Hood, do yourself a favor. Check it out. You'll laugh, you'll jump, you might learn something.
And you'll definitely never forget it.
It's a true cult classic for a reason. And that wraps up our deep dive into Leprechaun in the Hood. We hope you enjoyed coming along for the ride.
Keep exploring the unexpected. That's where the fun is.
Until next time.